Welcome to Want to Franchise Your Business? Intro to State and Federal Franchise Laws.
Hello and welcome to Franchising Your Business, Intro to State and Federal Franchise Laws with attorney Tim Pickwell. Tim has had a private law practice representing national and international restaurant, retail, distribution, and fitness studio franchise clients with an emphasis on franchise registration, disclosure, and relationship issues. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're going to talk about why business owners need counsel when developing a franchise. Tim, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
So what are the common legal pitfalls that business owners might face if they're starting a franchise?
The number one question I always ask when a prospective client is thinking about franchising is, have you filed a trademark registration? Not a requirement, but a very, very good idea. And I'm a little surprised often how many have not. And then it turns out that their beloved brand name is actually not something that can be registered. It may be generic. There may be conflicts. So I've had quite a few clients who first thing they do is change their name, which, they usually don't like, but it is the best way going forward. You'd hate to be 5-10 years down the road and get in a dispute over your name and lose the rights. So
yeah, that would not be ideal.
Yeah, that's number one. Number two, they're going to need a new entity, typically, because to create a franchise disclosure document, you need 3 years of audited financials. And almost no one has that when they're small business and they're getting ready to start up, or they're privately held business. So a way around that is to form a startup entity, and then you obviously can't have 3 years of audited financials. So you have an opening bank balance audit, or 2-3 months worth of audit, much simpler. And there's also a lot of good reasons to separate your new franchise venture from your existing mothership. If you have 2, 3, 4 units, you may even have different ownership of your existing business versus what you'll franchise with. And then after that is where we come in and give them the legal advice they need to start franchising, to comply with state and federal franchise laws.
All right. Well, this isn't a trademark podcast, so to speak, but I'm interested that you said that a lot of people haven't even looked to see if they can keep their name. Is that why? That surprises me, I guess, that someone wouldn't first check that out.
Yeah, no, it surprises me because I started my career doing international trademark work for Century 21 and then trademark work for Jack in the Box restaurants. So, and I used to do a lot of trademark work in this practice, not anymore. But it's surprising to me. They come up with a brand or name they like. They open a unit or two, and they're focused on their business. They're focused on their families. They're focused on a lot of things, but they haven't thought through for the most part, getting the name registered. There are exceptions. Some people, had it registered for years when I get it. Met one gentleman who I thought had a great concept, and he had 6 units all in the nursery daycare business. And yet he had a different name for each one. And I said, you need to come up with one strong brand and rename them all. It'll be very powerful.
Absolutely.
To do that. So, interesting how a lot of these entrepreneurs are not necessarily trademark oriented.
Yeah. So why is it crucial for business owners to have legal counsel when developing a franchise system from scratch?
I don't know that a layperson could do it. I've seen some attempts, and it's not good. So we hopefully can help them cost effectively comply with franchise laws and avoid pitfalls, teach them how to comply with laws while selling and offering franchises. Because, often I've had clients didn't understand franchise laws, got bad legal advice or no legal advice. And so they've sold 1 or 2 or more inadvertent and accidental franchises. And now they're in breach of several state and federal laws. And we have to figure out how to correct that without paying bushels of money to people. So very good idea to get early legal advice, and don't wait till it's too late.
Yeah, it's a complex process.
Yes.
With a lot of moving parts, and that the average person wouldn't know how to navigate.
And quite frankly, I'm a state bar certified specialist in franchise and distribution law, and I work with a lot of other specialists in franchise law. I'm going off to a conference in a few months. There will be 1,000 of them there. But I see some attorneys who actually don't know much about franchise law either charge exorbitant sum of money or they kind of pooch the whole thing up. On the other hand, my greatest source of referrals, other than this podcast, is attorneys who know what they don't know and don't want to become specialists in franchise law and refer some good clients to me. And they know that I'm not an employment lawyer. I don't want to take their corporate entity business, any of that. So one of the best sources is attorneys who know that they're not going to develop an expertise in 6 months and that the client's better off with getting specialist advice.
Can you explain the process of drafting a franchise disclosure document, or sometimes called an FDD, and how an attorney helps ensure compliance with those regulations?
A flaw in my business model is that the client hands me over a handsome check and then I hand them a bunch of paperwork to do. So we're trying to streamline that process, but basically we need a lot of information to prepare a franchise disclosure document. A franchise disclosure document is a legal document. It's not a marketing document, but contains a tremendous amount of information about the franchisor, even if it's a new entity, affiliates, the owners, the executives, their any litigation they've been involved in, personal bankruptcies, and the FDD, the franchise disclosure document, is supposed to give a prospective franchisee everything it needs to know to evaluate the business opportunity. So we have charts. These are required charts that show costs, fees, expenses that you might incur. And we have a chart called the estimated initial investment, which attempts to list, usually in a range, every potential cost that a franchisee might incur. And so we don't have this information and we can't make it up. So the business owner, who, recent example of mine, he opened 3 units of his concept and had tracked his expenses. So he was able to put together a decent estimated initial investment based on his experience of opening 3 and opening a 4th and closing it. So anyway, the FDD is just full of business information that is required and that is helpful to a prospective franchisee. And then there are the legal documents also in the FDD, the franchise agreement, subleases, personal guarantees, form of general release. The FDD is supposed to contain virtually every contract that a franchisee might have to sign during the relationship. So these things have evolved, and now we're talking 200 pages, 250 pages. There's a lot of information in the FDD, and so a lot of work goes into preparing it and making sure it's accurate, ties together, and can pass inspection when we go to register in a state like California.
250 pages.
Yes, sir. There's the audited financials, takes up 6, 10, 30 pages, depending on how big the company is. You have lists of franchisees. You have lists of franchisees who were terminated in the last year. Not to get too deep into the weeds, but there's various registration states, and they permit you to have one single form of document, but they only permit you to have that form of document if you include what they call state addendum that say, notwithstanding anything in that franchise agreement here in the state of Washington, et cetera. And so those state addendum go for 20 pages. So it starts adding up when you start putting a 40, 50-page franchise agreement into the document with the audited financials, the state addendum, the required receipt pages, grows and grows and grows. So
wow. That's intense. You definitely need a lawyer for that. Like you said earlier, like, I don't know how someone could do it on their own. And I'm starting to see why you said that.
I don't know how anybody could.
Yeah.
Just as a warning sign, I work with consultants. There are consultants I respect and I refer, and there are some tragedies out there. I have seen consultants who pretend to put an FDD together, and they cut and paste from I don't know what. I got a client once, the FDD was not really representative of their concept. It had pages that had been cut from a Canadian FDD, and it referenced British Columbia, even though the client was based in Ohio. It was malpractice. And
wow.
I've seen some unscrupulous consultants who save money by not hiring an attorney and attempt to put together an FDD. And often the poor client doesn't really know the difference. So we have to correct it. Yeah.
That's a nightmare. Well, how do you help people with setting up the legal structures like trademarks, licensing, and et cetera when starting a franchise?
I give some overall advice. Sometimes they have trademark attorneys, and I don't want to usurp any relationships, so I will refer them to Trademark Counsel or somebody who forms corporate entities, because I used to do all of those things, but now it's all franchising. And then we get into the preparation of the FDD. We train them. We have franchise sales legal training on what to say, what not to say, when you can say it. We try to walk them through the registration process, what we're going to do, what states you can sell in, what states you can't sell in until you're registered. Try to give them start with an overview of the law and how we even got here. Why do we have an FDD? Well, we have an FDD because there were perceived to be a lot of fly-by-night franchisors in the late 60s, early 70s that were unscrupulous and were taking unsophisticated mom and pops for their life savings. And so that is how the FDD evolved, and all the laws that were passed to protect unsophisticated mom and pops against potentially unscrupulous franchisors.
Wow.
And so understanding that tells you how we've ended up with this thick document with all this information.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe that people would try to take advantage of mom and pops like that. That's just so shocking.
Yeah, no, the laws were passed, and the first law was California in 1970. But at the time, the U.S. Senate was investigating franchising. New York Attorney General was investigating franchising. The Attorney General for the state of California said, next to land subdivisions, the single greatest source of complaints are franchisors. And there were a lot of celebrities lending their name to franchises. Johnny Carson and Mickey Mantle had to testify in front of the U.S. Senate. And so all these laws were passed because there were these public failures. Broadway Joe's, Joe Namath lent his name to a restaurant concept that sold hundreds of franchises and opened just like one and collapsed. And then Minnie Pearl lent her name to a concept that went public and sold over 1,000 franchises, only opened a couple hundred and then collapsed. So there were a lot of very public failures. And that's why these laws were passed.
When it comes to intellectual property, do you help ensure people are properly protected with their brand elements, logos, proprietary systems? Do you get involved with that?
Absolutely. So the franchise agreement is a license agreement. It licenses intellectual property to the franchisee, and hopefully the franchisor has some important and valuable intellectual property. And that could be recipes, could be supplier lists, could be how you train, could be how you monitor employees. It could be any number of items. It could be back office software. It could be scheduling software. Really runs the gamut. So part of that 250 pages is the table of contents for an operations manual. And so because it's could be protected intellectual property, you don't have to put the contents of your manual into the FDD. Franchisee is not entitled to that until after they sign a franchise agreement or are going through training. But we are very much licensing that intellectual property and protecting it, making sure the franchisee protects it, making sure they don't share it, that they don't publish it. There may be we've even put in fines if they allow the wrong people to see the manuals. And, I'm dating myself, but the ops manual used to be a 3-ring binder, and now basically it's online, locked by password on the company's intranet. And so, yeah, protecting that is a big part of what we do, and a big part of the prohibitions and protections that we put into the franchise agreement.
Obviously, if you're going to be starting a franchise, you probably want to expand over time. Do you assist in creating a strategic growth plan, and how do you help protecting the business model and the brand integrity?
I got a lot of business experience having been in-house for 17 years with franchisors and then doing this for 20 years. But I will often defer to a consultant on that kind of a business plan. I did have a conversation just yesterday with a prospective franchisor, and I think they were a little overwhelmed. They didn't really have a plan to be big. And trying to be a franchisor when you just want to stay small is a very expensive proposition. So we talked about some potential alternatives. But yes, we try to plan for growth. The document we create is usable in all 50 states, complies with federal law, and complies with the various registration states. We put provisions in there that are aiming for growth. They protect the franchisor. They protect the franchisor if they go to sell their business. Definitely the franchise agreement is anticipating that the franchisor wants to grow and will be able to grow. And so we plan for that by putting in various provisions that give the franchisee certain territorial rights, but give the franchisor the right to operate in other channels of commerce and to grow and to buy other concepts, things like that.
Why, just out of curiosity, why did you say that if you want to remain small, it becomes a really expensive proposition?
Well, we estimate to franchise, you'll want about a $200,000 budget over the first couple of years. And $50,000 of that is legal fees. And unfortunately, not all $50,000 goes to me, but it's not cheap.
Me neither.
Yeah. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense if you just want 2 or 3 concepts. That said, you can have a very healthy business being a regional franchisor of 15 brew pubs. I know such a concept, pizza and brewery. And they're just in Southern California with no plans to expand. There are regional Italian restaurants with high unit volumes. There's 25 of them, and it's a franchisor, but it's a family-owned franchisor business. And then, I get clients who think they're going to grow by 300, 600 units in just a few years, and that's just not realistic. So we do plan for growth, but we try to tell them, focus on your first 6 franchisees. And if they're happy and successful, they'll sell more franchises for you.
Yeah. Yeah, just realistic growth. That's probably the key.
And my most successful clients have grown organically, selling to their own employees or teachers, whatnot, and didn't start bringing on staff and incurring additional overhead until they were at 10, 15, 25 units. And that frugal approach, to me, is I've seen it succeed several times, while the franchisor goes in with a lot of idea and a lot of money, can burn through it very quickly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for that, Tim. And thank you for tuning in to Franchising Your Business, Intro to State and Federal Franchise Laws with attorney Tim Pickwell. To connect with him and the team, visit pickwelllaw.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. We appreciate it. Tim, I really appreciate your time. It's great seeing you again.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.